The first time I drove Tessa Whitaker home, I had one hand on her steering wheel, her left shoe in my cup holder, and her fingers wrapped around my forearm like she was trying very hard not to admit she needed me. I thought that would be the memorable part. I was wrong. The memorable part happened 26 minutes later when her father opened the front door, looked me up and down like I was a long-awaited package, and shook my hand with both of his. "So, you're him," he said. Finally. Behind me, Tessa whispered, "Oh my God, Dad." And that was the exact moment I realized my quiet little office crush had apparently been less quiet than I thought. My name is Owen Bell. I was 30 years old, and at the time I worked as a project coordinator for a small architecture firm in Portland, Maine. Nothing glamorous. Mostly budgets, permits, client emails, and convincing creative people that deadlines were not a government conspiracy. Tessa was one of our interior designers. She had this way of walking into a conference room with a roll of fabric samples under one arm and making the rest of us look like we'd dressed in the dark during a power outage. She was 28, sharp, funny, and so good at reading a room that I sometimes wondered if she could hear thoughts, which was inconvenient because a lot of mine were about her. I had rules about that. After a broken engagement 2 years earlier, one that ended with my ex telling me I was safe but not exciting, I became the kind of man who paid his rent on time, bought sensible shoes, and kept his heart in a locked drawer like an expensive bottle of whiskey I didn't trust myself to open. Tessa made that difficult. She'd lean over my desk to point at a floor plan and smell faintly like vanilla and black coffee. She'd steal the last cinnamon muffin from the break room, then leave half of it on my keyboard with a sticky note that said, "Don't say I never gave you anything." She remembered things people mentioned once. My mom's knee surgery, my old dog's name, the fact that I hated olives but liked olive oil, which she claimed was emotionally inconsistent. Still, we were coworkers, friendly, safe. At least that was the story I told myself until the Tuesday evening she twisted her ankle. It happened after a client presentation at the old Hartwell Hotel, a waterfront building our firm had been hired to renovate. The place had marble stairs, brass railings, and the kind of dramatic lobby that made you want to speak in a lower voice. The meeting had gone well. Tessa had saved it, actually. Our client, a man with a watch worth more than my car, had hated the original lounge concept. Tessa calmly opened her portfolio, spread out 3 alternate palettes, and said, "You don't want luxury, you want memory. There's a difference." The room went quiet. Then she walked him through a design that somehow made faded brick, navy velvet, and old ship lanterns sound like a love letter to Maine. I watched her do it and felt that familiar tug in my chest. Not pity, not protectiveness. Something warmer and more dangerous. Admiration. When we left, rain had turned the hotel steps slick. Tessa was still talking, half to me and half to herself, replaying the meeting. "I shouldn't have said the thing about memory," she said. "You absolutely should have." It sounded pretentious. It sounded expensive. Clients love expensive. She glanced over, smiling despite herself. "That's your professional opinion? My professional opinion is you could sell wallpaper to a lighthouse." She laughed, and because I was looking at her instead of the stairs, I saw the exact second her heel slipped. Her hand shot out. I caught her elbow, she caught my coat. For half a second, we were too close. Her shoulder against my chest, rain dotting her lashes, her breath quick and startled. "You okay?" I asked. She looked down, tried to put weight on her right foot, and immediately grabbed my sleeve harder. "Define okay. That bad? It's either a twisted ankle or my foot is being dramatic for attention." I crouched before she could argue, careful not to make a production of it. "Can you move your toes?" "Owen." "What? You are very serious right now? You're injured." "I'm embarrassed." "You can be both. Multitasking is one of your strengths." She gave me a look, but her mouth twitched. I helped her to a bench under the hotel awning. Rain blurred the harbor lights beyond the street. Cars hissed by on wet pavement. She sat with her injured foot extended, trying to look annoyed instead of in pain. "I can call a rideshare," she said. "You can, or I can drive you." Her eyes lifted to mine. "You don't have to." "I know." That landed differently than I meant it to. A little silence opened between us. She tucked a strand of damp auburn hair behind her ear. I'm not great at being helped. I've noticed. I'm excellent at giving help. I've noticed that too. Her smile softened, and for a second the whole city seemed to quiet down around us. Then she ruined it because Tessa Whitaker had a gift for self-defense through sarcasm. If you drive me home, you have to promise not to judge my car. I'm driving your car? My house is out past yours. If you drive me in your car, I'll have to get mine tomorrow. You want me to drive your car. I want you to experience character development. Her car was a 12-year-old Subaru with a cracked phone mount, 3 reusable grocery bags in the back, and an emergency umbrella that looked like it had survived combat. The driver's seat was set so close to the wheel I nearly folded myself in half getting in. Tessa watched me adjust it and laughed. You're very tall in my tiny kingdom. I feel like I've broken into a dollhouse. Respect the kingdom, Belle. I looked over at her. She had her injured foot propped carefully, her coat bunched around her, and a stubborn little wrinkle between her eyebrows. Even hurt, she was trying to keep the mood light. So I did too. Yes, Your Majesty. She smiled out the windshield, but not before I caught the color rising in her cheeks. The drive should have been simple, 20 minutes, maybe 30 with rain. But there was something strangely intimate about being in her car, surrounded by small evidence of her life. A blue scarf in the back seat, a parking receipt from a botanical garden, a paper bag from a bakery I liked but had never told her about. You go to Miller's? I asked, nodding toward it. She followed my gaze. Sometimes. They have the best maple scones. I know. You know? She looked out the passenger window. You mentioned it once. I glanced at her. She kept her face turned away, but her reflection in the glass gave her up. She was smiling. Something shifted in me then. Not loudly, not dramatically, just enough to make my next breath feel unfamiliar. The sensible thing would have been to let it pass. Naturally, I did not. You remember my bakery order? I remember lots of useless things. That feels less useless than most of my college degree. She laughed quietly. Then her phone buzzed in her lap. She checked it and made a face. My dad, she said. He worried? He's retired. Worrying is his hobby. She typed with both thumbs, then winced when the car hit a pothole. You should tell him you're hurt, I said. I told him I twisted my ankle. And? Annie replied with 3 exclamation points and a question about whether I had married a doctor yet. Efficient. That man has been trying to marry me off since I turned 25. Last month he suggested his dentist. Good teeth? Excellent teeth. No personality. Tragic. She looked at me sideways. You're enjoying this. A little. Don't. If he's home when we get there, he'll interrogate you. I've handled zoning boards. I can handle one retired dad. Tessa made a sound that was not quite a laugh. What? I asked. Nothing. Tessa. She shifted in the seat, suddenly more interested in the rain on the windshield. He knows who you are. I kept my eyes on the road, but my hands tightened slightly on the wheel. Because we work together? Sure. That was not convincing. He asked about my job. I mentioned people. People? Yes. Do all people get named individually? She turned toward me, her expression caught between amusement and panic. You are awfully curious for a man who claims to be emotionally low maintenance. I have never claimed that. No, you just perform it. That hit closer than I expected. I looked at her then, just for a second. She seemed to realize she'd said something true because her voice softened. Sorry. Don't be. The rest of the drive felt different, not awkward, just charged like a room after lightning. By the time I pulled into the driveway of a modest blue Cape Cod with warm lights in the windows, my pulse was doing something unreasonable. Tessa sat up straighter. Okay, before we go in, 2 things. We're going in? I can't hop up the porch steps alone, and if my dad sees you abandon me in the driveway, he'll assume you were raised by wolves. Fair. Second, he is enthusiastic. About dentists? About me not being alone forever. I turned off the engine and looked at her. Rain tapped gently against the roof. Her face was soft in the dashboard light. her eyes more vulnerable than I'd ever seen them at work. "You're not alone forever," I said. The words came out quieter than I intended. She looked at me for a long moment. "No," she said. "I guess not tonight." I got out before I could say something that would make Monday's staff meeting impossible. I came around, opened her door, and offered both hands. She took them. Her fingers were cold from the rain, but her grip was steady. When she stood, she swayed into me. I held her by the waist for half a second, just long enough to feel the shape of her breath, just long enough for both of us to notice that neither of us moved away quickly. "You okay?" I asked again, uselessly. Her eyes flicked to my mouth, then back up. "I'm getting there," she said. That sentence stayed with me all the way to the porch. I had one arm around her back, hers looped over my shoulders. We moved slowly, step by careful step. By the time we reached the door, she was laughing under her breath. "What?" I asked. "You smell like cedar. My soap has aspirations. I like it." I nearly missed the top step. Before I could recover like a dignified adult man, the front door swung open. A tall, older man with silver hair and wireframe glasses stood there in a flannel shirt, holding a dish towel. His eyes went first to Tessa's ankle, then to my arm around her, then to my face. His expression changed. Not surprise, recognition. He stepped forward and took my free hand. "So you're him," he said warmly. "Finally." Tessa froze against me. "Dad?" she said, and there was a warning in it. But her father only smiled wider. "I'm Daniel Whitaker," he said. "Come in, Owen. Dinner's still warm." Tessa closed her eyes like a woman praying for immediate evacuation. "Dinner?" I repeated. Daniel glanced at his daughter, then back at me. "Well," he said, lowering his voice as if he were sharing a family secret, "when my daughter texts me that Owen is bringing her home, I know better than to set only 2 plates." Tessa's hand tightened on my shoulder, and just as I helped her across the threshold, Daniel looked at her and said, "Honey, should I not mention the note you wrote about him? Or are we finally done pretending?" Tessa made a sound I had never heard from her before. At work, I'd seen her charm impossible clients, correct contractors twice her size, and once talk our office printer through a paper jam like it was a skittish horse. She was never rattled. Now she was standing in her father's entryway on one foot, clinging to my shoulder, bright red from her throat to her hairline. "Dad," she said, "there is no note." Daniel Whitaker blinked innocently. "Oh, my mistake. Maybe I imagined the folded piece of stationery on your kitchen counter that said, 'Owen Bell is unfairly.'" "Dad." "Kind," he finished, much too pleased with himself. I looked down at Tessa. She refused to look at me. Unfairly kind. I had been called responsible, dependable. Once, by a woman breaking my heart. Basically, a human seatbelt. But unfairly kind was new. It also did something dangerous to me. Daniel stepped back to let us in. "Let's get ice on that ankle before my daughter combusts." "I am already combusting," Tessa muttered. Her father's house smelled like garlic, lemon, and warm bread. It was cozy in a way my apartment wasn't, full of framed family photos, old books, and a gray cat who looked at me like I'd arrived late to an appointment. "This is Admiral," Tessa said as I helped her toward the living room. The cat narrowed his eyes. "Does he outrank me?" I asked. "Everyone outranks you in this house, right now." "That seems fair." She laughed despite herself, and the sound loosened the knot in my chest. I got her settled on the couch with her foot propped on 2 pillows. Daniel appeared with an ice pack, a towel, and the focused expression of a man who had been waiting years for a chance to supervise romance under the pretense of first aid. "I can do it," Tessa said, reaching for the ice. I took it from him first. "May I?" Her hand paused. That tiny question changed the air between us. I hadn't meant it to, but it did. Her eyes softened. "Yes," she said. "You may." I wrapped the ice pack in the towel and eased it around her ankle. Her skin was warm beneath my fingers. She inhaled quickly but didn't pull away. "Too tight?" I asked. "No." Too cold? It's ice, Owen. I'm being thorough. You're being sweet. The words slipped out before she could catch them. Daniel coughed into his fist in the doorway. I'll check the chicken. Dad, please go check the chicken in another state. He disappeared laughing. For a moment, it was just us in the living room with the rain ticking softly against the windows. I sat on the edge of the coffee table, still holding the wrapped ice pack in place. Tessa watched my hands. I'm sorry about him, she said. I like him. You would. He's weaponized friendliness. He made dinner. He made a trap. I've been in worse traps. Her mouth curved. Have you? Once got stuck in an elevator with a structural engineer and a man-eating tuna salad. That's not a trap. That's a war crime. I smiled. She smiled back. Then, quieter, she said, I really am sorry about the note. You don't have to be. I didn't mean for you to know I'd written anything. What else did it say? Her eyes shot to mine. Absolutely not. So, there was more. No, Tessa. It was a private thought. About me? Yes, she said, and the honesty of it landed between us like a match. I should have backed off. Work, boundaries, Monday meetings, all the sensible reasons lined up in my head like nervous accountants. Instead, I set the ice pack gently in her hand so she could hold it. Then I said, I've had private thoughts about you too. She went still. From the kitchen came the clink of a pan. The cat jumped onto the armchair and pretended not to listen. Tessa's voice was careful. What kind of thoughts? The kind I told myself not to have. Her fingers tightened around the towel. I looked at her then, really looked. Not as a coworker across a conference table, not as a friend who shared muffins and inside jokes, as a woman I wanted. Her lips parted slightly. Owen, she said, barely above a whisper. I know. I let out a short breath. I know the reasons this is complicated. Do you? We work together. That's one. I'm bad at pretending I don't care. That's another. I laughed softly, but she didn't. She was watching me with something open and searching. What's the third? I asked. She swallowed. I'm afraid I made you up. That stripped every clever answer right out of me. What do you mean? She looked toward the kitchen, then back at me. After my mom died, Dad and I got very good at saying we were fine. I got good at being useful, competent, the person who doesn't need too much. I knew that version of her. I saw it every day. I'd admired it without realizing how heavy it might be. And then you showed up, she said, holding doors, remembering deadlines, bringing me coffee when I hadn't asked, acting like being steady was just normal. I kept thinking no one is actually like that. I must be inventing half of him. My throat tightened. Tessa. She looked embarrassed now, but she didn't retreat. So, yes, I wrote a note. Because sometimes I need to put thoughts somewhere before they eat me alive. It wasn't meant to become a family announcement. I reached for her hand slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. Her fingers slid into mine. I had touched her twice that night because she was hurt. This was different. This was choice. I'm not half-invented, I said. I'm just quieter than is probably healthy. A small laugh escaped her, watery at the edges. I like quiet, she said. I like being the person you call. I didn't call you. You volunteered. I like being the person you let volunteer. Her thumb moved against mine once, almost absent-mindedly, and it made my heart kick hard enough to embarrass me. Daniel chose that exact moment to lean around the doorway. Dinner in 5. Owen, do you eat asparagus? Tessa closed her eyes. Bye. Please say no, so this ends. I eat asparagus, I said. Traitor, she whispered. Daniel beamed. Wonderful. Dinner was not a trap. It was worse. It was nice. Daniel made roast chicken with lemon, potatoes crisp at the edges, and asparagus I praised because I had apparently chosen a side. Tessa sat beside me at the old oak table, her injured foot propped on a spare chair, our knees occasionally brushing beneath the table. Each time it happened, she glanced at me. Each time neither of us moved away first. Daniel told stories about Tessa as a child. Tessa threatened to replace his coffee with decaf. Admiral stationed himself under my chair and accepted tribute in the form of chicken. It felt absurdly like belonging. At one point, Tessa reached for the salt and winced. I passed it to her before she asked. She looked at me and said, "See? Unfair." I smiled. "I'm trying to be fair." "You're failing." "Good." Her cheeks went pink again, but this time she didn't look away. After dinner, Daniel insisted on doing the dishes alone. "Doctor's orders," he said, though no doctor had been consulted. Tessa and I ended up back in the living room, the lights low, rain softening the windows. I helped her settle onto the couch again, and when I started to move to the armchair, she caught my sleeve. "Don't sit over there." It was not dramatic, not coy, just honest. So I sat beside her, close enough that her shoulder brushed mine. For a while we said nothing. Her hand rested between us on the cushion. Mine rested beside it. Eventually her pinky touched mine. "Is this a terrible idea?" she asked. "Probably." "Because of work?" "Partly." "Because you're scared?" I turned my head. She was already looking at me. "Yes," I said. Her expression softened. "Me too." That should have made me cautious. Instead, it made me brave. "I don't want to pretend tomorrow that tonight didn't happen," I said. "Good," she whispered, "because I don't think I can." I looked down at her mouth. She noticed. This time, she didn't hide. "Tessa," I said, "if I kiss you, your dad might come in with dessert and a trumpet." Her laugh broke softly against my shoulder. "Then you better be quick." So I leaned in. It was a gentle kiss, barely more than a question. Her hand came up to my jaw warm and certain, and she answered by kissing me back. No thunder, no movie music, just rain, her breath, and the terrifying knowledge that something I had been denying for months had finally stepped into the light. When we parted, she stayed close. "Still unfair," she murmured. I smiled against her temple. "You can write that down later." From the kitchen, Daniel called, "I found pie." Tessa dropped her forehead to my shoulder. "We can never tell him." "He already knows." "Yes," she said, sliding her fingers through mine again. "But let's make him suffer for details." By Monday morning, Tessa's kiss had become a problem. Not because I regretted it, because I remembered it too well. I remembered the soft catch of her breath, the way her fingers had rested at my jaw like she was both asking and answering, the way she'd smiled afterward, forehead against my shoulder, while her father loudly pretended not to hover in the kitchen with pie. I had driven home that night with the taste of apple cinnamon on my tongue and my heart acting like it had been given caffeine and a second chance. Then came Sunday. Sunday was texting. It started practical. "Tessa, ankle is purple, very fashionable." "Me? Does it match your throw pillows?" "Tessa, nothing matches my throw pillows, that's the point." Then it became less practical. "Me, how's Admiral?" "Tessa, disappointed you left." "He sat by the door for 10 minutes. Me, I made an impression." "Tessa, don't get smug. He also loves rubber bands." Then, at 9:42 p.m., it became dangerous. "Tessa, I keep thinking about the couch. I stared at my phone so long the screen dimmed." Me too." 3 dots appeared, vanished, appeared again. "Tessa, I don't want Monday to make us cowards." That was Tessa. One clean sentence, straight through the ribs. Me. "It won't. I meant it when I typed it." Then Monday arrived wearing fluorescent lights and HR policies. At 8:17, I walked into the office holding 2 coffees from Miller's Bakery and found Tessa already at her desk. One ankle wrapped, one flat shoe on, looking like every soft thing from Saturday night had been locked behind professional eyeliner. She looked up. Our eyes met. For one horrifying second, I forgot how to be normal in public. Then she smiled. Not the office smile, not the client smile, the couch smile. I nearly spilled both coffees. "Morning, Belle," she said. "Tessa." Her gaze dropped to the paper cups. "Is one of those an apology?" "For what?" "For making me think about you all Sunday." I froze. She took the cup from my hand and lifted one eyebrow. Relax, everyone's in the kitchen. I exhaled. You enjoy danger. I enjoy your face when you panic. I don't panic. You do internally, it's very organized. I laughed, and just like that, the fear loosened. I leaned a hip against her desk. How's the ankle? Better, still dramatic. Did you ice it? Yes. Elevate? Yes. Stay off it? She took a sip of coffee instead of answering. Tessa. I had laundry. You were supposed to rest. I was supposed to have clean underwear. That is a compelling counterargument. Her eyes sparkled over the lid of her cup. See, this is why I keep you around. Keep you around. I was still absorbing that when our senior architect Vivian swept past with a stack of folders. Owen, conference room in 10. Tessa, if you're mobile enough, the Hartwell revised boards need your blessing. Tessa straightened. I'm mobile enough. The moment Vivian disappeared, I said, You are not carrying boards. I can carry boards. You can carry one pencil and your coffee. Bossy. Accurate, she tilted her head. Careful, you're starting to sound invested. I looked at her across the small space between us. I am invested. The teasing left her face. For a beat, the office noise faded. The printer, the phone, someone laughing near the kitchenette. She held her coffee with both hands like she needed something to do. Okay, she said softly. I'm okay. Okay, I liked hearing that. I wanted to touch her. Her hand, her cheek, the strand of hair caught near her collar. Instead, because we were at work and I was trying not to become an HR training video, I picked up the foam core boards beside her desk. Conference room, I asked. Her smile returned, warmer now. Yes, please. The day became a careful dance. Not sneaking, not exactly. More like learning a new language in a place where everyone else still spoke the old one. I carried sample boxes, and she pretended to be annoyed. She corrected a measurement on my permit schedule, and I pretended not to like the way she leaned over my shoulder. We spent 20 minutes in the materials library arguing about brass finishes while standing close enough that her sleeve brushed my arm every time she moved. Antique brass, she said. Satin brass. Antique has depth. Satin has restraint. She looked at me. Do you always value restraint? Historically, yes. And currently? That depends. On? I lowered my voice. Whether you keep standing that close. Her lips parted. The library door opened. We sprang apart like guilty teenagers. It was only Lucas from accounting, looking for packing tape. He glanced between us. You two okay? Brass dispute, Tessa said. Very serious, I added. Lucas backed out slowly. Architecture is weird. When he was gone, Tessa pressed a hand over her mouth, trying not to laugh. I leaned against the sample shelves, helpless. This is your fault, I said. My fault? You're the one weaponizing your voice. I have a voice? Don't be humble, it doesn't suit you. Noted. Her laughter faded into something softer. I like this. Hiding in the materials library? No, us. She took one careful step closer, her limp barely there now. Even the awkward parts. I looked at her and felt the locked drawer in my chest give another inch. I like us too. Us. We both heard it. Her smile trembled at the edges, then she said, Are we allowed to say that yet? I think we just did. At lunch, we walked slowly to the sandwich place around the corner. It wasn't a date, technically. It was 34 minutes between meetings with takeout wrappers and plastic cups. It felt like a date. We sat at the small counter by the window, rain clouds gathering again over the street. Tessa stole a pickle from my plate without asking. You realize, I said, that's a significant boundary violation. You brought me coffee, we're past boundaries. Dangerous legal theory. I stand by it. You're barely standing at all. She kicked my shoe gently with her good foot. Rude. I smiled and then watched her unwrap her sandwich with careful fingers. Can I ask you something? Only if I can avoid answering with humor if needed. Deal. I hesitated. Saturday night, your dad said, finally. How long has he known about me? She looked out the window. Long enough, apparently. Since the winter gala, she said. The one where the caterer dropped shrimp on Martin's shoes? That's the one. That was 4 months ago. I know. What happened at the gala? She turned back to me, a little shy now. You gave me your coat. It was cold. You gave me your coat, then spent 40 minutes pretending you weren't cold because I said I liked the lining. I remembered that night. Her bare shoulders, my coat around them, me lying through my teeth while freezing beside a decorative ice sculpture. I was fine, I said. You were blue. Blue-ish. She laughed, then sobered. When I got home, Dad asked why I was smiling. I told him about you. Just the coat? At first. And then? Her eyes met mine. Then I kept telling him things. My heart did that unreasonable thing again. What things? That you remember everyone's coffee order. That you talk to interns like they matter. That you once stayed late fixing a mistake that wasn't yours because you didn't want Jasmine to get blamed. I looked down. Owen. I forced myself to look back up. She was studying me. Do compliments make you want to leave your body? Yes. Good to know. It's not that I don't appreciate them. I know. Her voice gentled. You just don't believe them quickly. That was too true for a lunch counter. I folded my napkin once. My ex used to say I was reliable like it was a defect. Tessa's expression changed, sharpening with quiet anger on my behalf. That was cruel. She wasn't trying to be. Cruelty doesn't always need a plan. I let out a breath. I think I've been trying not to bore anyone ever since. Tessa reached across the narrow counter and put her hand over mine. It was public. Small. Undeniable. You don't bore me, she said. You calm me down and wake me up at the same time. It's extremely inconvenient. I turned my hand beneath hers and laced our fingers together. Good, I said. I'd hate to be convenient. She smiled, but her eyes were bright. We stayed like that until our phones buzzed within seconds of each other. Vivian. Client moved Hartwell review to 2 o'clock. Need both of you. Tessa groaned. Romance interrupted by navy velvet. At least it has depth. She narrowed her eyes. Don't start. Back at the office, the meeting went well until Martin, our firm's managing partner, paused over the budget sheet and frowned. These vendor numbers don't match the estimate, he said. I leaned forward. They did Friday. Tessa's shoulder brushed mine as she reached for the folder. Let me see. For 10 minutes, the room became all business. Numbers, timelines, substitutions. The discrepancy wasn't catastrophic, but it was messy enough to keep us late. By 6:30, the office had emptied. Tessa sat beside me in the conference room, shoes off, injured ankle propped on a chair while we compared invoices. This is not how I imagined our first evening alone after kissing, she said. I looked up. You imagined it? She did not blush this time. Several versions. My pen stopped moving. Tessa. What? You confessed private thoughts. I'm being collaborative. I pushed the invoice aside. Come here. She blinked. I'm injured. You're 3 feet away. With dignity? Preferably. She rolled her chair toward me, slow and ridiculous, until our knees touched. I caught the armrests and tugged her the last inch closer. Her smile faded. I cupped her cheek. I want a real date. Her hand closed around my wrist. Define. Real. No invoices. No pretending lunch doesn't count. No fathers with pie. That last one may be difficult. Saturday night, I said. Dinner, just us. Her gaze dropped to my mouth, then lifted. Yes. Yes? Yes, Owen. I choose the inconvenient, unfairly kind man with the dangerous voice. I kissed her then, in the blue shadow of the conference room, with spreadsheets between us and her fingers sliding into my hair. This kiss was not a question. When we broke apart, she rested her forehead against mine. We should finish the invoices. We should. Neither of us moved. Then her phone lit up on the table. A text from Daniel appeared. Daniel. If Owen is working late too, remind him leftovers exist. Tessa groaned. I smiled. He ships us. He captains the ship. I picked up my pen, still grinning. And under the table, where no policy could see, Tessa slid her hand into mine. By Saturday afternoon, I had changed shirts 3 times and learned something unsettling about myself. I was 30 years old, employed, reasonably functional, and completely undone by the phrase real date. The first shirt looked too office. The second looked like I was trying to convince someone I owned a boat. The third was dark green, which my sister claimed made me look less emotionally refrigerated. So I went with that. At 6:15, I parked outside Tessa's blue Cape Cod holding a small bouquet of tulips and feeling like I had somehow skipped backward to 17. Daniel opened the door before I knocked. He looked at the tulips, then at me, then over his shoulder. "Tessa," he called. "He brought flowers. You owe me $5. From somewhere inside, Tessa yelled, "I said he might bring flowers. You said he'd be too practical." I said he'd bring something practical and romantic, like a tire gauge with a ribbon. Daniel nodded at me solemnly. I would have respected that. I considered jumper cables, I said. His grin widened. "Come in, son." Son. The word hit me square in the chest. I stepped inside and then Tessa appeared at the top of the short hallway and every clever thing in my head fell over. She wore a deep blue dress with tiny buttons down the front, soft sleeves, and ankle boots that looked supportive enough to satisfy me and pretty enough to satisfy her. Her hair was down. Her mouth curved when she saw the flowers. "Hi," she said. It was ridiculous that one word could make me forget my own name. "Hi." Daniel looked between us and sighed happily. "I'll get a vase." "Dad," Tessa said, warning. "What?" Flowers need water. Romance needs witnesses." "It absolutely does not." He vanished toward the kitchen. I held out the tulips. "These are not practical." "No," she said, taking them. "They're very unfair." "You keep using that word. You keep earning it." Her fingers brushed mine around the stems. Instead of letting go right away, she hooked one finger around mine and tugged me a step closer. "Also," she said softly, "green was the right choice." I looked down at my shirt, then back at her. My sister will be unbearable. Tell her she has excellent taste. I won't survive that. Tessa smiled, and then, before Daniel could return with commentary, she lifted onto her toes and kissed me. Not long, not dramatic. Just enough to say, "I'm happy you're here." Just enough to make me want to stay. Dinner was at a small place near the harbor where the tables were close. The candles were real, and the menu used words like reduction without apology. Tessa claimed the seat facing the windows. "So I can watch the water," she said. "You mean so you can watch me try to pronounce the specials?" "That too." Her ankle was better, though she still moved carefully. I tried very hard not to fuss. I failed exactly twice. The second time, when I asked if she wanted the chair with more legroom, she leaned across the table. "Owen." "Yes?" "I like that you care, I do. But if you treat me like antique glass all night, I'm going to stab you with a tiny fork." I sat back. Clear feedback. "I'm not fragile." "I know. Do you?" I looked at her in the candlelight. The question beneath the question was not about her ankle. "I know you're strong," I said. "I'm trying to learn that caring for you doesn't mean hovering." Her face softened. "Good answer." "I prepared several." "Of course you did." The waiter came. We ordered scallops, steak, roasted carrots, and one dessert to split later because Tessa said sharing dessert was either romantic or a test of character. Over dinner, we talked about everything except work for almost an hour. Her mother, Elise, had been a librarian who labeled leftovers and cried at documentaries about birds. My father had taught high school history and still sent me articles about Roman roads. Tessa had once wanted to design theater sets. I admitted I played piano badly, but earnestly. "Badly how?" she asked. "Confidently wrong. That's my favorite genre." I told her about my broken engagement because it felt dishonest not to. I kept it brief, but Tessa listened like she had all the time in the world. "When she left," I said, turning my water glass in my hands, "I think I decided wanting too much made me easy to disappoint. So I became very reasonable." Tessa rested her chin on her hand. "Reasonable looks lonely on you." I swallowed. She reached across the table, palm up. I took her hand. There, in a crowded restaurant with silverware chiming and strangers laughing around us, she threaded her fingers through mine like it was the most natural thing in the world. I don't need you to be exciting instead of steady, she said. I want the steady man. I also want the man who kissed me in a conference room like he forgot there were invoices on the table. Heat climbed my neck. I did forget. I know. Her thumb stroked mine. It was excellent. I laughed, low and helpless. After dinner, we walked slowly along the harbor. The air smelled like salt and rain coming later. Tessa's hand found mine before we reached the first street lamp. I didn't ask if she was cold. I put my arm around her shoulders and she leaned into me like she'd been planning to. Better, she murmured. Not hovering? This is acceptable hovering. We stopped near the railing. Boats rocked black against the dark water. Her cheek rested briefly against my shoulder. I was nervous tonight, she admitted. You? The woman who told a millionaire he didn't understand memory? Clients are easy. You matter. There it was again. Her gift for taking the floor out from under me. I turned toward her. You matter too. I know. Then she smiled faintly. I'm practicing believing that. I brushed my knuckles along her cheek. How's it going? Better tonight. I kissed her under the harbor lights, slow this time, with no father in the kitchen and no office door waiting to open. Her hands slid beneath my jacket, warm at my waist, and when she sighed against my mouth, I felt something inside me stop bracing for impact. When we parted, she stayed close. So, she whispered, real date? Very real. Second date? Extremely real. She laughed and kissed me again. That should have been the whole night. It almost was. Then my phone buzzed. I ignored it. It buzzed again. Tessa leaned back. You can check. I don't want to. Healthy. Impractical, but healthy. I pulled it out. A message from Vivian. Vivian. Sorry to interrupt your weekend. Need both you and Tessa in early Monday. HR wants disclosure forms if there's a relationship. Martin noticed the late nights and his being Martin. My stomach sank. Tessa read my face. Work? I showed her. For a moment, the harbor felt colder. It's not a disaster, I said quickly. It's just paperwork. And gossip. Probably. And Martin acting like my design judgment is compromised because I kissed the schedule guy. Despite myself, I smiled. Schedule guy? You have many talents. Calendars are one. Tessa. She blew out a breath and looked toward the water. I don't want to become a problem you have to manage. You're not. At work, women become stories faster than men do. I had no easy answer, which meant I owed her an honest one. You're right, I said. So we handle it carefully. We disclose. We set boundaries. And if anyone implies your work is anything less than yours, we'll... She lifted an eyebrow. I stopped. Respectfully challenged the premise in a meeting-appropriate tone. That was almost romantic. I was going to say something less meeting-appropriate. I know. She squeezed my hand. I liked that part too. I stepped in front of her so she had to look at me. Listen, I don't want this only if it's easy. Her eyes searched mine. I want Saturday nights, I said, and Monday mornings, and figuring out the awkward parts without letting them scare us into pretending. Her mouth softened. That sounded dangerously close to a speech. I can make it worse. Please do. I choose you, I said. Not because you twisted your ankle, not because your dad fed me pie, not because we're convenient. You. Complicated work forms and terrifying cat included. Her eyes turned bright, but her smile held. Admiral is not terrifying. He judged my shoes. He judges everyone's shoes. Tessa. She lifted our joined hands and kissed my knuckles. I choose you too, Owen Bell, even when you get noble and procedural. I laughed and she stepped into me, wrapping both arms around my waist. We stood there a long time, holding each other beside the dark water. Only after I drove her home did the next complication arrive. Daniel was on the porch with 2 mugs of tea, pretending he had not been waiting. Well? He asked. Tessa kissed my cheek before answering. He's still him, Daniel smiled at me over her head. Good. Then Tessa's phone rang. She glanced at the screen and went still. I saw only the name before she turned it slightly away. Graham, her ex. Her thumb hovered over decline, but her face had changed. Not longing, not fear exactly. Something unfinished. I waited. Tessa looked up at me, then took my hand again where her father could see. I'm not answering, she said. And she didn't. Graham called 3 more times that night. Tessa declined every one. Daniel, to his credit, did not ask questions. He only handed her tea, kissed her forehead, and disappeared inside with the wisdom of a man who knew when not to parent out loud. I stayed on the porch with her. The rain had stopped, leaving the steps glossy and dark. Tessa stood beside me in her blue dress, my jacket around her shoulders, her phone silent at last in her hand. You don't have to explain, I said. I know. She looked at me. But I want to. That mattered, more than if she'd never gotten the call at all. We sat on the porch swing, she tucked one leg beneath her, careful with her ankle, and I rested my arm along the back of the swing. Not touching her. Just there. She noticed. After a moment, she leaned into my side. Graham and I dated for almost 2 years, she said. It ended 8 months ago. He wasn't awful. Not in some dramatic, villainous way. He just made everything feel negotiable, my time, my boundaries, my work. If I was upset, I had to present evidence. I was quiet. He called last month, she continued. Then again last week. I didn't answer either time. Tonight just felt badly timed. She laughed once. Aggressively timed. Do you want to call him back? No. She turned her face toward me, and I need you to believe that without me having to prove it. There was the bruise he'd left. Not heartbreak exactly. The exhaustion of being cross-examined. So I did the only thing worth doing. I believe you. Her shoulders lowered as if she'd been carrying a bag she finally set down. That easy, she whispered. That easy? She stared at me for a long second, then put her hand over my heart. You make me feel like I don't have to argue my way into being trusted. I covered her hand with mine. You don't. She kissed me then, right there on the porch swing, soft and sure and a little sad around the edges. I kissed her back with everything I didn't know how to say yet, that I wanted to be different from the people who had made her feel like love was a courtroom, that I wanted to learn her without trying to own her, that choosing her meant trusting her choices too. When she pulled away, she smiled faintly. My dad is absolutely watching through the blinds. Which window? Kitchen. I glanced over, a curtain twitched. Subtle, I said. He thinks he is. On Monday morning, we walked into the office together, not hand in hand. We weren't reckless, but not apart either. HR gave us disclosure forms in a beige folder that looked designed to drain romance from the human soul. We filled them out honestly. We confirmed I didn't supervise Tessa, she didn't report to me, and neither of us would participate in reviews affecting the other's compensation. Martin stood in the doorway afterward wearing his managing partner face. I trust this won't affect the Hartwell project, he said. Tessa smiled with all her teeth. My ability to select velvet remains intact. I coughed into my coffee. Martin looked at me. Owen. The schedule is also unaffected by velvet, I said. Vivian, passing behind him, muttered, Shame. It might improve morale. That could have been the end of it. But gossip is a weather system in any office. It moved through the kitchen by noon. By 3, Lucas from accounting asked if this meant he should stop interrupting brass disputes. Yes, Tessa said. No, I said at the same time. She looked at me. You want him interrupting? I want plausible deniability. You kissed me in a conference room. I said plausible, not strong. For 2 weeks it was awkward. Then it wasn't. We learned. At work we were careful, professional, occasionally terrible at not smiling. Outside work we became something neither of us had expected to find in our late 20s and early 30s. Easy but not shallow. Steady but not dull. Graham called once more. This time Tessa answered while I was in her kitchen helping Daniel argue with a stubborn jar of pickles. She stepped into the hall. Her voice stayed calm. No, I'm not available to talk through the past again, she said. I hope you're well. Please don't call me anymore. A pause, then firmer, because I said no. When she came back, her face was pale but clear. I didn't ask for details. I opened my arms. She walked straight into them. Daniel, holding the defeated pickle jar, sniffed loudly and said, I'm emotionally unavailable for the next 10 seconds. Tessa laughed against my chest. By the following spring, the Hartwell Hotel opened. The lounge looked exactly like Tessa had promised. Navy velvet, old brick, ship lanterns glowing warm against the walls. Luxury, yes, but memory too. At the opening party, I watched her stand beneath the amber light while the client praised her work to anyone who would listen. She found me across the room and raised one eyebrow, as if to say, well. I lifted my glass. Unfair, I mouthed. She grinned. Later, when the speeches were over and the crowd had thinned, we slipped out to the hotel steps where she had twisted her ankle months earlier. The marble was dry this time. Tessa looked down at the spot and shook her head. Hard to believe this stair tried to ruin my life. Interesting interpretation. It injured me. It introduced you to my driving. It exposed me to my father's matchmaking. It got you dinner. It got me you, she said. The harbor wind moved through her hair. For a second, I could see every version of us at once. Her hand gripping my forearm in the rain, Daniel opening the door, the porch swing, the HR forms, the quiet mornings with coffee, the loud dinners with her father, Admiral eventually deciding my shoes were acceptable. I took her hand. You got me before the stair, I said. I was just slow. Very slow. I'm steady? You are. She stepped closer. And exciting. That word, once used against me by someone else, landed differently in her mouth, like a blessing instead of a verdict. I kissed her on the hotel steps, in the exact place where everything had started moving. 6 months later, I moved into the Blue Cape Cod temporarily while my apartment lease ended, and somehow never moved back out. Daniel claimed he needed help with gutters. Admiral claimed my side of the bed. Tessa claimed the rest of me. A year after that night, I proposed in the Hartwell lounge under the old ship lanterns, with a maple scone hidden badly in my coat pocket because romance, according to Tessa, should always include snacks. She said yes before I finished the sentence. Daniel cried. Vivian pretended not to. Lucas asked if the engagement affected brass disputes. And Tessa, my unfairly kind, inconvenient, brilliant Tessa, slipped the ring onto her finger and whispered, finally. Sometimes love doesn't arrive as thunder. Sometimes it arrives as a twisted ankle, a borrowed car, a father at the door who already knows your name, and a woman brave enough to stop pretending she hasn't been choosing you for months. What would you have done if you drove your coworker home after she got hurt and her dad opened the door saying, so, you're him? Finally? Have you ever experienced something similar where someone's family knew about a crush before you did? Tell me your story in the comments. If you like this one, leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.